Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, to that end, in terms of the perceived importance or the lack of CMO roles, marketing for many companies is sort of the engine that drives the business, acquiring, cross-selling, retaining customers. That's somewhere in there is revenue and is profit, right? And I think that many marketing organizations are sort of sales support functions, or there's a strategy that is handed to them, and they are then executing or going after those markets, as opposed to really having a market expansion function. And I think that the most successful CMOs are those that are advisors to the CEOs, that are really, if you understand the consumer and you understand the dynamics in the market, and have an ear to you're kind of social junkie and you know what's going on out there, that a lot of the strategy is not just being delivered through how you market, but is effectively being informed by how you interact with your customers. And I think that that's a huge thing. So are you in the sales support function, or are you really part of the business?
A key question I hear, there was a discussion before with Bearing Point, Primo, et cetera, and a key question that comes up that's driving a lot of reorganization that I hear about is accountability. And so when we talk about accountability, I mean, how do we see that? How do we see that manifesting itself? And certainly you bring different perspectives on the topic, but from a partner perspective, from a recruitment perspective, maybe the kinds of people we're looking for, what you're being asked to do from the client side, how much does accountability really matter, and what are you being asked to do about that? How are you being asked to drive that for partners within your organization?
Peter, let me just start, because I perhaps have the most, I'm not as close to it as some of the others here, but from our perspective in search, the way we see that manifested is the change in position specifications as we talk to clients about going to market for a CMO or for a lead marketing role in an organization. This issue of accountability is front and center. And we're hearing more and more P&L responsibility being incorporated into the role. There's a lot more discussion around marketing metrics and marketing return on investment. And that's, it's not brand new, but it's new enough. And in the context of what John said about the relative newness of the role itself, it's a pretty important change in the nature of the role.
Let me drill down on that for a second, because I hear, so we hear this growing need to be accountable, but let's face it, I mean, marketers, and I was a client-side marketer before I was an analyst, marketers are traditionally right-brain creative type people, right? So we've got the left brain saying, okay, results, quantitative, ROI, and then we've got the right brain saying, okay, but I still want to be like, creative, I want to be innovative. And we see chief marketers, how many of you feel squeezed, right? You need to drive innovation, but you need to show results. So how do I experiment and show results at the same time, right? Without getting fired. So, I mean, how do you balance that tension?
Well, I mean, again, I'm addressing it from not, how do I avoid being fired? In our case, how do we find that person who is that right brain, left brain balance? And that's what more and more clients are looking for. So I can clearly say there is this squeeze. I'm sure if for those of you sitting in the role, I'd be very surprised if you didn't feel that kind of pressure, because either you're feeling it now in your roles, or your CEO or board will be expressing it to people like us down the line.
Or you work at Google and you've got so much free cash flow, it just doesn't matter, right?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Their day will come.
Yeah. Ben?
So I guess the thing depends on how we define accountability. So in our company, we really primarily focus on how we drive value, the marketers, that is. Now, we don't necessarily see driving innovation as opposed to actually being able to drive value. I think the challenge that we've really put forward for ourselves is, when we do innovative things, making sure that we can put in place the way to kind of really measure, to show how it really drove the value. I think in the past, to maybe what Gaston was saying, the organization would pride itself on being able to point to great breakthrough creative, but not really be able to talk through about actually how it drove value for us. So we really tend to focus a lot incredibly more recently, on focusing on kind of three ways of how we measure accountability. One, obviously, is customer satisfaction, and increasingly more for us, advocacy. All right, we're very clear for us that, when somebody recommends a Motorola purchase, that does a lot more than us saying anything about that. The second one is a lot of work and effort being placed on kind of operational and quality improvement. And this is to some extent how we start to get at how we're actually building a better marketing organization. So there's some high-level things in there around, rotations and people and things, and even more tangible things like, which I'm a big proponent of, obviously, is kind of how we shift dollars in interactive, because that in and of itself is kind of a second order. It implies that we're actually doing something to bulk up our capabilities in the interactive space. And then there's the traditional kind of cost and productivity measures, and a lot of what our new CMO has been really driving us to think harder about is kind of adjusting the mix of what we call kind of working and non-working dollars, but really trying to get better at showing how the dollars that we do put against the business actually drives real results. And that has its whole implications for how we talk about measuring results and setting up. But for us in marketing Motorola, I've been there about 5 years. Casey's been with us a little more than a year. That's been a real fundamental shift for us. In the past, we were clearly in the don't know what half of the dollars is actually driving any value, but that was okay. And the razor actually probably did us a disservice because it was so phenomenal a product that we really didn't have to talk about value. But now we're really getting a lot more back to what I would call kind of basic blocking and tackling of what marketers really should be able to do on a fairly consistent basis. And that's really how we're focusing on accountability.